So now we've got our environment set up and Node.js installed, we will go and install some extensions into VsCode. These extensions make our lives a lot easier when we're programming. It speeds up production and just makes life easier in general, to be honest. Especially reduces the repetitiveness of the boilerplate that you need to use React with. So we're going to install a couple. We're going to install auto close tag, which will automatically close our HTML tags when we're typing them into our React components, which I'll explain what components is in a little bit. We're going to use a extension which uses React Snippets. So later on in the tutorial, after you've learned what sort of things you need to type to create a React component, this will speed up our production rapidly by using short keywords to be able to autocomplete the whole boilerplate for us. So let's go into VsCode. And if you've never used VsCode before, you've got all the toolbar stuff that we need down the side. So the top one is our files that are actually in the project, which we have none at the moment. That is to search the whole project. This is source control for GitHub, and if you don't know what GitHub is, it's basically a version control. So every time you commit, you can commit a new version of your app, and if for some reason it's broken, you can always revert back to a previous version so you can recover your work, which we'll talk about in depth a little bit later on. This is for running debugging. You can mark points in the code, and once the program hits that code, it will pause the app, bring you in here so you can actually see what's going on with your code. We won't use that very much because we're going to debug most of our code in our browser, seeing as it's a web development. And this is for your extensions. So the couple extensions we want is the auto close tag, and anytime you type in HTML, so let's say a H1, a header, you would put your front tag and it would automatically create the close one for you. Makes life easier. So type in auto close tag, get that one installed. Now this one's optional. They're all optional, but I like the auto rename tag. So if you decide that you don't want a div in HTML and you instead want it to be a span or a section, you don't have to rename the close tag as well. You can just rename one and it will automatically rename the other. So for React extensions, if you just type in React and go down to this React Native. Now, React Native is for mobile development, but this is a big snippet packet of React Native, React, and Redux snippets for ES6 and 7, which is important because React tends to be run on ES7 because it integrates Babel. And I'll explain what this does in depth later on. But for the first part of this course, we're not actually going to be using this just because I want you to get the hang of using the boilerplate yourself rather than using the shortcuts. So get all of these installed, restart your VS Code, and I will talk a bit more in depth about what React is and how we're going to be using it and why it's good and why it's actually bad. There are some drawbacks to React, but mainly there are more benefits than there is drawbacks depending on what your web app is actually doing.